What's good, YouTube? This is the Only Big Green. You go again, back with another deck profile. And this is finishing up my Edison series that I've been doing. I had the Flame Veil, I had the Dandy Warrior, or Quick Draw Dandy, whichever one you want to call it. And here is Billy Brake's build of the Caliber Cat. This build is very hard for me to play up against because it's like super controlling. I like to look at like the Dandy Warrior to be the aggro deck of the format, this to be like the controlly deck of the format, and then Flame Veil to just be one of those decks that just takes you by surprise, because they can be controlly and aggro at the same time. But I like to look at this deck as like the slowest deck of the format compared to the others, but it definitely does do a lot of damage. And a little note, a side note, I do have trap dust shoots. They're just in other decks, like my GOAT decks. But if you have a trap dust shoot, you can play a trap dust shoot in here. But this build does not play a trap dust shoot simply because I just don't own another one and I don't want to proxy it. But if you do have a trap dust shoot, you can play a dust shoot. First up, the main card of the deck, Triple Doomcow Knight. Doomcow Knight is very, very strong if you can just summon it and pass, because whenever, during either player's turn, when a monster's effect is activated, you can send him to the grave, and then it negates the monster's effect and destroy it. This is a must. You do have to do this. So beware of that before you, because if you set a Raikou and have him on the field, whenever your opponent attacks into the Raikou, he's going to force negate your own Raikou. So be aware of stuff like that. And then on to the other reason why this deck, you have the Doomcow part, here's the cat part. Rescue Cat. I mean, this card is very, very strong. And I feel like if this card wouldn't have gotten errata, this card would be used in today's meta game a whole lot more than what it is now. But what you would do with this card is you would tribute it, and then you'd make double Airbellum, or you would make an Airbellum and a Raikou. And onto the little cat engine, you play the triple Airbellum, self-explanatory. The one Summoner Monk to get you to your cats. You can make like a Mist Worm play, or if you don't have a Mist Worm, you can make a Airbellum play, or like a Black Rose play to nuke the field if you need to. And then the one Sangin to search you for your cat, or search you for your Raikou, or like your Gravekeeper's Descendant. And then speaking of Gravekeeper's Descendant, you have the Gravekeeper engine. You have the Descendant and then the 2 Spy. Descendant can tribute a Gravekeeper monster except himself to pop a card on the field. So what you would normally do is you would normally flip the Spy and then special summon Descendant, pop the Spy to pop a card. Or if your opponent would attack into the Spy, you would just summon another Spy and then like summon the Descendant if you have it in hand, pop, and then pop 2. Onto your little flip engine, you play the Nimble Mega Hamster to search your Raikou. Onto the beaters, or the boss monsters, 2 Cyber Dragon. The reason why you're playing 2 Cyber Dragon is because you're playing a Chaos Sorcerer. So you want Lights Engrave, and it can make some cool level 8 Synchro, level 6 Synchro plays, and 7 Synchro plays if you have the options of doing that. And then Chaos Sorcerer, just because BLS was banned, so this was the best thing you had to BLS. 1 Gores, just because, again, with this deck having the Doomcows and the Rescue Cat, you're very prone to not having a board sometimes. So this card really can save you and win you games when you drop it. The 1 Caius for pretty much outing Stardusts, or if you're playing the mirror match, outing the Chaos Sorcerer. And then in my opinion, the strongest card in the game at this time, Dad. This card was, every time I lose to this deck, it's because of Dad. Dad is just way too good. I feel like Dad could have easily been banned after Teledad. I don't know why they didn't ban this card, because, my bad, because this card just straight up wins games when you drop it. I mean, it's just insane. There's really like no way of outing this card. If you can drop this card, you just auto win the game. Or if it's your opponent dropping it on you, you auto lose the game. The only way of really getting around this card is if you have a TT ready for it or a Solemn Judgment ready for it. So if I were you guys, I would save your TTs and your Solemn Judgment for this card if you know your opponent is playing the Doomcow deck. 2 Pot of Avarice for self-explanatory reasons. I mean, a lot of cards are going to the grave, like your Doomcow, your Rescue Cat. Like, if you have a good opening board, if you have a good opening board, you can easily get 4 monsters in your graveyard on turn 1. So this card is always alive in this deck. 1 Allure because you play a lot of darks, so you can afford to play Allure in this deck. 1 Heavy, 1 MST, for reasons of this was at 1, this was at 1, so you had to play them. Brain Control and Mind Control just for syncing with your opponent or to get around an opponent's card. 2 Books just to act as an interruption, or if your opponent's swinging in with a big beater and you don't want to take that, you can book it. My Body, because this deck is like really controlly, you're prone to losing your board, and if you lose your board, it can be a bit hard to come back from it, so you definitely want to have this. And then the Smashing Ground for getting over things like Titanial and stuff like that, or if your opponent has other things like a Dark Arm Dragon on board or something like that, it can get around that. 3D Prison because Stardust is a pain to deal with. 2 Bottomless, again, for if you're facing the mirror match, it gets rid of things like Chaos Sorcerer, it gets rid of Dark Armed. If you're not facing the mirror match, this can get around things like Black Rose and stuff like that if they don't nuke the board. The 1 Dust Tornado. Starlight Road, because again, Stardust is really, really good in this format, if not the best monster synchro-wise of the format. And then 1 Solemn Judgment. You guys can say this in your head every video. Best trap card, in my opinion. Arguably best card in the game. On to the extra deck. Again, my extra deck is always the same for these type of formats. So use this as a guiding. You don't have to use this extra deck. Just use this extra deck to guide you. The 1 wow, I was going to say Magician Force. That's a set. It's not a card. 1 Magical Android. Your Gaia, your Goyo. Oops. Your Black Rose. I already know the comments about this. I was a kid when I did this, and I wish I would not have done this to this card. I mean, it looks pretty, but at the time, I didn't know that this card was going to be as expensive as it was, because once this card shot to like $30 when I was a kid, I was really like, why the heck did I do this? But don't rag me too much. 2 Stardust, Thought Ruler, Colossal, Red Dragon, Ally, Sea Dragon, Brio, Mistworm. Mistworm in this deck is really easy to make because you can make a first turn Mistworm. You know, I'll just show you guys a quick combo. With a Summoner Monk and a spell card, doesn't really matter. With a Summoner Monk and a spell card, you can make a first turn Mistworm. And you guys can probably see how this works. You summon the Summoner Monk and then switch it to defense. Ditch for the Smashing Ground. Then you'll go grab your cat. And if your opponent has no answer to cat, it's probably safe to make the Mistworm because your opponent's going to answer on the cat summon. They don't want this going off. So you'll activate Cat Effect to summon out your Airbellum. And then you'll get your Raikou. And then what you'll do from here is you'll sync up for the Mistworm. It's not that hard of a combo. It's pretty easy to pull off. And then you'll just return 3 cards your opponent controls and then attack. Or another way of doing it is if you want to have your Summoner Monk left on the board, instead of making the Raikou, you can go and make double Airbellum and then sink into your Airbellum. So that way you have ways of getting cards out of your opponent's hand. And speaking of the extra deck, the last monster, Airbellum. And this was the Doom Cow Cat that Billy Brake played. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I am probably going to be bringing more formats. Ever since I first started uploading to YouTube almost a year ago, I've always been talking about my but the wind up format, and then like the Insector and Dino Rabbit. I haven't brung them, but that's going to be next on my list to bring them. I've had them decks built longer than I've been on YouTube. I've had them decks built for close to 2 years now. So I definitely need to be bringing them to you. That's probably going to be the next thing I'm going to bring to you. If it's not the next, Black Wings will definitely be the next. The Black Wing for this format and for the X-Saber format that came right after this format. If you guys didn't enjoy the video, dislike it. If you guys don't like my channel, unsubscribe. This has been the Only Big Green Yu-Gi-Oh! Or Johnny, and I'll see you guys later.